Closing a big sale can be tough. I get it, I understand. You do all this hard work building rapport and qualifying the lead, only to then choke when it's time to seal the deal. Does that sound familiar? Well, many reps leave money on the table because they wait until the very end of the sales process before asking the big, will you buy question. And because it's been left till the end of the conversation, it becomes awkward, which is no wonder why people avoid it. But there is a smoother approach that is micro-closing throughout the entirety of the sales process, so that when you get to the end of it, the prospect is ready to move forward. That way, for both you and the prospect, there is no big scary finale, it's just a series of small commitments. So if you want to boost your commissions, you need to get comfortable asking for the sale. You need to sprinkle micro-closing throughout your calls, and the more time that the buyer says yes, the more likely they are to say yes at the end of the sales process. So let's get into micro-closing. I'm going to share what it is and then a simple 3-step process so that you can micro-close throughout the buyer's journey. Okay, so let's get into the very first step of micro-closing, and it's pretty freaking simple. All you got to do is ask the question, does it make sense to do, and then whatever you want the buyer to do. This question is very quickly going to become your secret weapon. You could ask, does it make sense for us to get this installed next week? Or does it make sense to jump on a quick call? We can run through the business case and see who else needs to be involved to make this happen. That is it, and it's pretty smooth. And what's genius about this question is that it's all about timing, not necessarily 100% commitment from your prospect. You're not cornering anyone, you're just checking if the stars have aligned to take a small step forward in the buyer's journey. If, heaven forbid, the buyer says no, what the buyer is saying is that it's not about you, it's not about the product, it's not a no to everything that you've just outlined, it's a no to doing it right this second. And that is amazing feedback. That is your cue to figure out what else needs to be done to solve this issue so that the buyer feels comfortable moving forward. So why does this ninja sales move work so well? Well, first off, it drops the pressure. No prospect is expecting questions like this. They're expecting the usual sleazy, slimy salesperson who sees a little bit of it in and gets the sales pitch and starts shoving it down the throat of their buyers. You're also updating the prospect on the buying process. You're nudging them to think logically about that next step without all the emotional baggage of a close coming at the end of it. And here's the kicker, and this is why it's so simple. You are building collaboration, not coercion. You're showing that you care about being on the same page as the buyer. You're building trust, you're building rapport, and you're not even trying that hard to do so. So if you're nodding along with that question and you're thinking, this could be useful, but you may be wondering what happens when the buyer does say no, well, stick around because that's what we're going to cover next. Okay, so if you hit a no on one of your micro closes, don't sweat it. Remember that a no isn't a door slamming in your face, it's just a buyer saying, not right now, or I'm not ready to make that step. So if the buyer says, well, this isn't the perfect time to move forward, this then becomes the perfect opportunity to plan your next move. You ask the follow-up question, okay, what do we need to do to move this forward? And this isn't just any random sales question. Again, like the last point, this is collaborative rather than being confrontational. Think of it like this. Your buyer is your co-pilot and you're flying this plane and you're trying to get from prospect to deal done and value delivered. The buyer is your co-pilot. They're your navigator. They're helping you get from one place to another. So if somebody says no to the first question in the micro-closing process, they're not shutting down the idea of buying completely because you've not asked them for the deal. You've not done that big awkward close at the end of the process. You just asked, hey, does it make sense to move forward to this step? So if they say no, you say, no worries, I get it, fine. What do you think that next step is, or how do we get to that next step? So rather than trying to guess what they want, you're letting them lay down the roadmap. This way, you're not playing this weird guessing game where you kind of bashing heads and the buyer's got their guard up and you're trying to manipulate them into taking steps forward in the buying process. Instead, you're building a strategy together. And if you want to level up this second question, you can also sprinkle in a little bit of social proof. You can say, okay, I hear you. Company X was in the same boat and they found that doing Y helped them immensely. Is that a potential next step that we could explore? Now, this question is subtle, but is incredibly powerful. It shows that you are listening to the buyer. And from the buyer's perspective, it also leverages the fact that obviously this salesperson, this business development rep, whatever your title is, as a small business owner, this person has done this many times before. So I should probably, rather than trying to blag this on my own, I should probably follow the leader. I should probably use their process to get this problem solved. This process of using social proof to nudge your buyer in the direction you want them to go and influence them in that direction is called the nudge technique. There's a video coming up on this next week, so make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss out on that. So have you ever felt like you are running in circles with a buyer? You're getting a no, then a no, and then I'm not sure about this, and maybe, probably, no. Well, welcome to the final game changer in our micro-closing saga. This is called the loop. And this is how it works. You say, hey, does it make sense to do this? The buyer says no. You go, oh, crap. So don't panic. What you're going to do next is then go, okay, does it make sense to do this? Maybe you get another no. And maybe you then go, okay, well, does it make sense to do that? And then you get another no. And most salespeople at this point get frustrated, they panic, and they just basically give up. Instead, we're going to ask the question, okay, well, what do we need to do to move this forward? We're going to let the buyer coach us what that next step is. And then once we complete it, we'll then go back to the original question of, okay, now we've done this, does it make sense to do that? And move the deal forward. And we go around in this loop over and over and over and over again until essentially the deal is done. That is what micro-closing is, and that's why it happens throughout the entirety of the sales process. And this looping technique isn't a trick. It's the art of staying in the game long enough until you both agree that you can move on to the next step that makes logical sense. It's all about keeping this conversation and the action steps flowing and moving forward, and avoiding the dreaded silence where leads tend to disappear and vanish, and then you give up on them, and then you're sending weird emails like, hey, just checking in, that obviously you should never send to anyone and no buyer ever wants to receive either. So even if you feel like you've been on the no train multiple times with the same prospect, just keep doing this loop over and over and over again. Remember, each no that the buyer gives you to a question like, does it make sense to do this? Does it make sense to move forward with this? Does it make sense to move on to this step of the buyer's journey? Is actually a step closer to yes if you use this looping process. So don't leave your closing till the very end of the deal. And if you micro-close throughout the entirety of the process, you're going to leave those end of deal sales meeting jitters behind. When you micro-close throughout the process, you are making yes just part of the journey. And you're gonna see lots of more yeses as you go throughout it, rather than relying on that big, bold leap of faith at the end. And you're also gonna be in sync with your buyer the entirety of the buying journey as well. You're gonna turn any potential stress into just another productive conversation. And if you found value in this video, why not click the video that's on the screen right now and continue making selling